Why Leonor is more powerful than King Felipe. The cameras always seem to follow the king. The speeches are delivered in his voice. The constitutional authority rests formally in his hands. And yet, inside the evolving story of Spain's monarchy, a surprising question has begun circulating among observers of royal power. What if the most influential figure in the royal family isn't the reigning monarch at all? What if the real long-term power of the Spanish crown now lies with someone who has not yet taken the throne? Because in quiet conversations among political analysts, historians, and royal watchers, a fascinating argument has begun to emerge. The future queen may already hold a kind of influence that even the current king cannot fully match. That future queen is Leonor, Princess of Asturias. At first glance, the idea sounds impossible. After all, the official head of state in Spain is still King Felipe VI of Spain. He signs laws. He represents the nation internationally. He presides over the ceremonial machinery of the state. Leonor, by contrast, is still in training. She attends military academies, participates in carefully structured public appearances, and studies the constitutional duties that will one day define her reign. So how could she possibly be more powerful? The answer lies not in formal authority, but in something far more subtle. Timing, expectation, and the enormous influence of the future. To understand this unusual dynamic, we need to step back and look at how modern constitutional monarchies actually function. In theory, the monarch reigns but does not govern. Political power belongs to parliament and elected officials. The crown acts as a symbol of national unity rather than an active political force. This structure was carefully defined in Spain's democratic constitution following the end of dictatorship in the late 20th century. It allowed the monarchy to survive by transforming it into a neutral institution, respected but limited. Over the decades, that arrangement has largely worked. But within this system, an interesting phenomenon sometimes appears. The heir to the throne can become more symbolically powerful than the monarch who currently wears the crown. Why? Because the heir represents the future. And the future shapes expectations. When observers look at the current king, they see stability, experience, and continuity. His role is to preserve the monarchy exactly as it exists. But when they look at the princess, they see something else entirely. Possibility. Leonor is not simply preparing to inherit a throne. She is preparing to define what the monarchy will look like for the next half-century. That long horizon gives her a unique kind of influence. Every speech she delivers, every public appearance she makes, every step of her training becomes part of a larger national conversation about where the monarchy is heading. And that conversation often carries more weight than the daily ceremonial duties of the current monarch. This dynamic has been visible before in royal history. When a young heir captures the public imagination, attention naturally shifts toward the future rather than the present. The reigning monarch continues governing within established traditions, but the heir becomes the focal point of cultural and political curiosity. In Spain today, that shift is beginning to take shape around Leonor. Her life has unfolded during a moment when the monarchy itself has been under intense scrutiny. The institution has had to rebuild trust, reinforce transparency, and prove its relevance in a modern democratic society. Much of that work has been carried out by her father. King Felipe VI of Spain ascended the throne determined to restore credibility and discipline to the monarchy. His approach has been cautious, careful, and deeply respectful of constitutional limits. He has avoided political controversy, focused on institutional stability, and consistently emphasized the neutrality of the crown. But while Felipe represents the present structure of the monarchy, Leonor represents its future evolution. And that difference matters. In many ways, Felipe's influence is constrained by his role. As king, he must maintain strict neutrality in political matters. His speeches are carefully measured, his actions guided by protocol, his authority defined by constitutional boundaries. He is expected to avoid even the appearance of political involvement. Leonor, however, exists in a different space. As heir to the throne, she carries enormous symbolic importance, but she is not yet bound by the full weight of the monarchy's responsibilities. This allows her public image to develop with slightly greater flexibility. Her speeches often focus on generational themes: youth engagement, education, the future of democracy, international cooperation. These topics resonate strongly with younger audiences, and they help position Leonor as a bridge between Spain's traditional institutions and the expectations of a modern society. That bridge may ultimately become one of her greatest sources of influence. Because the survival of any monarchy in the modern world depends heavily on public support. And public support is increasingly shaped by generational identity. Many young Spaniards feel distant from the traditional symbols of the state. The monarchy, with its centuries-old rituals and inherited titles, can sometimes feel disconnected from contemporary life. Leonor has the potential to change that perception. Her generation grew up in a world defined by global communication, digital culture, and rapidly evolving social values. If she succeeds in presenting the monarchy as something compatible with that modern reality, the institution could gain renewed legitimacy. And that possibility has enormous political implications. Political leaders understand that the popularity of the monarchy can influence the broader stability of Spain's constitutional system. If public support for the crown remains strong, calls for abolishing the monarchy remain marginal. If that support declines, the debate could become far more serious. This means that Leonor's long-term image carries strategic importance not only for the royal family but also for the political system that surrounds it. In that sense, she holds a kind of soft power that no sitting monarch can easily replicate. Felipe governs the present, Leonor shapes expectations for the future. And in politics, expectations can sometimes be more powerful than authority. Her training reflects this reality. Over the past few years, Leonor has undergone extensive preparation designed to transform her into a fully capable head of state. Her education includes constitutional law, diplomacy, international relations, and military training across multiple branches of Spain's armed forces. These experiences are not simply symbolic. They are intended to ensure that when she eventually becomes queen, she will command respect not only as a royal figure but also as a prepared national leader. Every stage of this training has been closely followed by the media and the public. Each milestone reinforces the narrative that Spain's future monarch is serious, disciplined, and capable. And that narrative strengthens her influence long before she actually ascends the throne. Another reason Leonor's position appears so powerful is the concept of generational renewal. Monarchies, like all institutions, must adapt to survive. But adaptation often happens through the arrival of a new ruler rather than through dramatic changes during an existing reign. The moment an heir becomes monarch offers a natural opportunity for renewal. New priorities, new tone, new relationship with the public. Many people already view Leonor as the face of that future transformation. They imagine a monarchy that remains loyal to tradition while embracing transparency, social awareness, and international engagement. Whether those expectations are realistic remains to be seen. But the expectations themselves are powerful. They shape how the monarchy is discussed today. And they place Leonor at the center of the conversation. There is also a psychological dimension to royal influence. A reigning monarch often represents continuity, stability, and established authority. An heir represents youth, energy, and possibility. Human attention naturally gravitates toward possibility. That is why headlines about Leonor frequently generate intense public interest, even when her official responsibilities are still limited. People are not just watching what she does. They are imagining what she might become. That imagination gives her presence a remarkable symbolic force. It is a kind of power that does not appear in constitutional documents. But it shapes public perception in profound ways. Of course, none of this means that Leonor currently holds formal authority over her father. Spain's constitutional system remains clear. The reigning monarch is the head of state, and the heir prepares for the future. Yet influence in modern institutions rarely depends only on formal titles. It depends on narrative, on symbolism, on the collective expectations of society. And right now, the narrative surrounding the Spanish monarchy is increasingly focused on the young woman who will one day inherit the crown. Leonor, Princess of Asturias. Her father maintains the institution. But she represents its destiny. Felipe preserves the monarchy's stability. Leonor carries the hopes of its transformation. And in the quiet mathematics of public attention, future potential can sometimes outweigh present authority. So when observers suggest that Leonor may already be more powerful than the king, they are not speaking about constitutional power. They are speaking about something far less visible, but often far more influential. The power of expectation, the power of generational change, and the power of a future queen whose story is only just beginning. Crown. If Leonor's growing influence is rooted in the power of expectation, then the next question becomes even more intriguing. What happens when those expectations begin to shape the behavior of the entire monarchy? Because in modern royal institutions, the heir does not simply wait for the crown. The heir slowly transforms the environment around the crown long before the moment of succession arrives. And in Spain today, that transformation is quietly unfolding around Leonor, Princess of Asturias. Over the past few years, Leonor's public role has expanded carefully but steadily. Each new responsibility she receives is designed not only to prepare her for the throne but also to introduce the Spanish public to the idea of her future reign. These appearances are never random. Every speech, every ceremony, every international event is part of a long-term strategy to build familiarity and trust. Royal advisors understand something crucial about constitutional monarchies. The public must feel comfortable with the next monarch long before the moment they actually become king or queen. If that trust exists early, the transition of power becomes smooth. If it does not, the monarchy can face instability. That is why Leonor's training has been unusually comprehensive. In addition to her academic studies, she has entered Spain's military education system, a tradition that reinforces the future monarch's connection to the armed forces. This process has placed her inside institutions that historically play an important symbolic role in national unity. It is also a powerful signal to the public. A monarch who understands the military structure of the nation commands a different kind of respect. By completing this training, Leonor is building credibility long before she inherits the crown. And credibility, in modern public life, often translates directly into influence. While all of this is happening, her father, King Felipe VI of Spain, continues to perform the daily responsibilities of the monarchy. He signs legislation passed by parliament. He meets foreign leaders. He presides over national ceremonies and state visits. These duties are essential to maintaining the institution's stability. But they also follow a predictable rhythm. Felipe's role is defined by continuity. Leonor's role, by contrast, is defined by anticipation. And anticipation naturally attracts attention. This difference has created an interesting shift in how the public discusses the monarchy. Conversations about the king often focus on the present, the political climate, the stability of the country, the monarchy's current position within the constitutional system. Conversations about Leonor focus on the future. What kind of queen will she be? How will she modernize the monarchy? Will she bring a new tone to the institution? These questions generate enormous curiosity. And curiosity, in the age of modern media, becomes a form of power. The more the public speculates about Leonor's future role, the more central she becomes to the monarchy's narrative. In some ways, this dynamic mirrors what happens in politics when a rising leader begins to overshadow established figures. The experienced leader maintains authority, but the rising figure captures imagination. That shift does not happen through official announcements. It happens gradually, through public attention. For Leonor, that attention is growing every year. Her speeches are studied closely by journalists and commentators. Her public demeanor is analyzed for clues about her personality and leadership style. Even small details, the way she delivers a speech, the themes she chooses to highlight, the causes she supports, become part of a larger conversation about Spain's future monarchy. And that conversation has consequences. Because political leaders also pay attention to these signals. Spain's elected officials understand that the monarchy's future popularity could influence the country's broader political stability. If Leonor successfully connects with younger generations, the monarchy could enter a new period of legitimacy. If she fails to establish that connection, Republican movements could gain momentum. This makes Leonor's public image strategically important, not just for the royal family, but for the entire constitutional framework of the country. In this sense, Leonor carries a responsibility that goes beyond traditional royal expectations. She is not simply preparing to become queen. She is preparing to ensure that the monarchy itself remains relevant in a rapidly changing society. And that task requires a careful balance between tradition and adaptation. The Spanish monarchy is deeply rooted in history. Its ceremonies, symbols, and rituals are designed to reflect centuries of national identity. Yet modern societies increasingly demand transparency, relatability, and openness from their public institutions. Leonor's generation understands this instinctively. Having grown up in a world shaped by digital communication and global awareness, she represents a cultural shift within the royal family. Her presence signals that the monarchy is not frozen in the past. It is evolving. That perception may ultimately become one of her most powerful tools. Because institutions survive not only through legal authority but through cultural relevance. If people feel that an institution reflects their values and aspirations, they are more likely to support it. Leonor has the opportunity to redefine how the Spanish monarchy connects with the public. Her speeches often emphasize themes like education, responsibility, and civic engagement. These messages resonate strongly with younger audiences who may otherwise feel disconnected from traditional royal symbolism. By speaking directly to those audiences, Leonor is quietly expanding the monarchy's base of support. This strategy is subtle, but its effects can be significant. Over time, it could reshape how the monarchy is perceived by an entire generation. And that generational shift would give Leonor enormous influence when she eventually becomes queen. There is also an international dimension to her growing importance. European monarchies often observe each other closely, learning from each other's successes and challenges. A new generation of royal heirs is emerging across the continent, each navigating the same fundamental question: how to preserve ancient institutions in a modern democratic world. Leonor's development is part of this broader pattern. As she gains experience, she may become one of the defining figures of the next generation of European royalty. That possibility further amplifies her symbolic power. Because when the world looks at Spain's monarchy in the future, it will increasingly look at Leonor. Her leadership style, her public priorities, and her ability to connect with citizens will shape international perceptions of the institution. All of this explains why some observers describe her influence as quietly surpassing that of the current king. Not in terms of legal authority, but in terms of long-term significance. Felipe's reign safeguards the monarchy today. Leonor's future will determine whether it thrives tomorrow. And that distinction places her at the center of the monarchy's long-term destiny. It is a unique position, one that combines immense responsibility with enormous potential. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Leonor's story is how carefully it is being managed. The royal household understands that influence built too quickly can provoke backlash. Public expectations must grow gradually. Trust must develop naturally. That is why Leonor's appearances remain measured and deliberate. Each step forward is carefully planned. Each new responsibility introduced at the right moment. The goal is to allow the Spanish public to grow comfortable with the idea of her future leadership over time. If that process succeeds, the eventual transition from king to queen could feel less like a dramatic change and more like a natural continuation. And when that moment finally arrives, the quiet power Leonor has been building for years may become fully visible. At that point, the young princess who once seemed simply to be preparing for a distant throne will stand as the central figure of Spain's monarchy. A monarch shaped not only by tradition, but by the expectations of an entire generation. A queen whose influence began long before she ever wore the crown. And perhaps that is the most fascinating truth of all. Sometimes the most powerful figure in a monarchy is not the one who holds the crown today, but the one the entire nation is already preparing to follow tomorrow. Crown,